Bendezú is a small rural community that has had persistent poverty and child poverty rates for over 40 years. We have no hospital. Our parents are often overworked and underpaid. And former President Barack Obama included Bendezú as part of what he coined the corridor of shame in response to our poor educational outcomes. I take great pride in the county that raised me. I am from Marlborough County, and I am here at Villanova, one of the wealthiest suburban communities in America. Who would have thought? When people ask me what made me choose Villanova, I laugh. I tell them that God sent me here. And I can share that story another time. But for now, I would like to continue this open, honest, and transparent conversation that we are having about poverty in America and right here at Villanova. Everything I speak will be spoken in truth and in love. During my time at Villanova Law, I have endured directly inflicted hardship. In the interest of time, I will share two of my experiences with you today. I have personally and physically moved every semester in law school by myself and again, miles from home. I'm only 5'2", but, and I have some pretty heavy stuff. I didn't move because I wanted to be closer to school or had roommate drama, but I moved strictly for financial reasons. I lived in an apartment near school that turned out to be too expensive, went home for a while, lived in a long-term Airbnb stay, and am now a returning resident assistant on Villanova's undergraduate campus. Yes, love y'all. While sharing showers with sophomore girls can be interesting, free housing is a plus. Next, I was granted $15,000 to come to Villanova. For someone from a low-income background, I thought this was incredible. It wasn't until I realized tuition was $65,000 that I began to pause. What made me pause more was talking to my peers. When I would mention how much Villanova offered me, they would say, "That's it?" I was confused. How was I receiving the least? I will be graduating with almost $200,000 in student loan debt. My question to VLS: how can a student with seemingly the most need graduate with the most debt? Also knowing it will take her longer to pay it back on a public interest salary. Knowing I'm interested in public interest, I found the perfect solution. Villanova offers a free tuition scholarship to incoming students committed to public interest. Because I applied late in the application cycle, scholars were already selected for my class. However, my 1L year, I asked if I could walk on as a scholar. I knew I was committed to public service, and I knew the free tuition would allow me to focus less on my finances and more on succeeding academically at VLS. I was told funding was not available, and I completely understood. However, since then, Villanova has welcomed their largest class of scholars, extended this scholarship to candidates that declined, and has received millions of dollars in donations, all of which have triggered me, and caused great emotional stress. Am I invisible? To be fair, I am grateful for the chance to apply for opportunities such as hardship funds, but that's only a bandage, something to quiet, soothe, and cover the actual problem. To walk into this law school building every day, to be surrounded by wealth and prestige while struggling and burdened with debt, and while expected to perform like those who are not feels inhumane. My second question to VLS: how can you say Caritas and Black Lives Matter with no thought to a Black life in front of you, systematically oppressed by your hands? It's not only hypocritical, but it's embarrassing. We cannot talk about oppression and white supremacy without acknowledging its very presence here. Many nights I cried wondering if I would ever reach financial stability and freedom, in part because I never saw it. I was born to two loving, wonderful teenage parents who are watching on Zoom. Growing up, my mom worked 2 to 3 jobs as a nurse aide to take care of my siblings and I. My third question to VLS: how is it that I am in law school working 2 jobs just like her? Just like I did in college. I thought this was supposed to be my way out. I am privileged to have the opportunity to be here and to obtain a legal education. However, I learned that I am privileged yet marginalized, grateful yet angry, and strong yet tired. But make no mistake, I am no victim or charity. Romans 8:28 says that all things work together for the good of those who love God and who are called according to his purpose. I believe I was hand-selected and that my best days are ahead. And because of this, there isn't much that I want. What I want most from Villanova is acknowledgement and an apology. But even if I don't receive any of these, I am grateful to have received clarity and purpose. With my law degree, I will fight poverty and address racial injustice and economic inequity in America. More specifically, I'm interested in disrupting anti-Black discrimination in our child support and public welfare systems by advocating for low-income, teenage, and unmarried families. Throughout my VLS experience, I frequently thought about the very vulnerable communities I hope to serve. Dead broke dads buried in child support debt, single mamas doing what they can to get by, and Bendezú babies suffering and wondering whether they will ever break the cycle. I see them, I understand them, I am them. My experience at Villanova is a direct reflection of America. Poor communities are trying to survive while also trying to get those with the resources to notice, to care, and to correct. I dream of the day where higher educational institutions will protect first-generation students from returning to a life of poverty and instability, where those that deserve the most won't have to struggle the most, where equity isn't forgotten after diversity is achieved. My hope in life is to make things easier for those coming after me so that they don't have to experience the same hardships that I have. To conclude, as I mentioned, God sent me here. And as you can imagine, throughout my entire experience, I always questioned why. But perhaps it was for this very moment to challenge each and every one of you to not just talk about it, but be about it. To not just listen, but to act. I don't know what God has planned for me next, but all I know is that Villanova has prepared me for it. I am grateful to my parents, siblings, and nieces for giving me the willpower to keep going, my professors and friends for allowing me to vent and be vulnerable, and to Professor Senna for giving me the opportunity to share today. And I also want to thank her for being my Shiro advocate and my friend. As I introduce the panelists today, keep in mind that there are students at Villanova experiencing the issues they are discussing. I am not the only one. And who knows, one day these same students may have the mic. What will they say? So as we're reflecting on that, I would like to introduce... Oh my God. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. Y'all. Wow. I love y'all. Thank you. Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Wow. It took a lot for me to do that. It really did. So now we'll introduce our first panel, Shifting the Poverty Lens, Caritas in Focus. Please welcome to the stage Cassie Haynes, Co-Executive Director of Resolve Philly, Roxana Bendezú, Director of Communications at PAX Christi USA, along with the Caravan of Central American Mothers in Search of Disappeared Migrants, author Purcaro, Assistant Vice President for Mission and Ministry, Co-Chair of University Sustainability Leadership Council, and Adjunct Professor of Theology at Villanova University. And lastly, Alicia Robinson, Board Member of Student-Run Emergency Housing Unit of Philadelphia. Thank you.
My name is Cassie Haynes. I'm the Co-Executive Director of a journalism organization in Philly called Resolve Philly. Our mission is to develop and advance journalism that's rooted in collaboration and equity and the elevation of community voices and solutions. Before I get started, I just want to take a second. A colleague of mine talks about how trauma schedules itself. We're talking a lot about trauma today, especially in my community of Philadelphia. And so I want to call out, especially for those who are not from this area or don't spend a lot of time in Philadelphia, that Philly is a city of joy. It is a city of hope. It is a city of love. It is a city of creativity and beauty and art and laughter. And so as we are having these conversations that are deeply rooted in pain and trauma, I urge you all to remember that there is also joy. There is so much joy, and that joy is not lost even in the face of trauma and hardship and poverty. I want you to think back to your childhood or to the last time you read Little Red Riding Hood, to your child, maybe to a grandchild. I'm going to give you a minute to recall the details, just broad strokes, right? Just take a second, think about what happens. Are we recalling? Yeah? All right, so the story starts off with Little Red. She is taking like a basket of bread or cookies or something to her grandmother. She's walking down the road. She's approached by a wolf, right? The wolf is like, I think he comes up to her maybe like 2 or 3 times, like it's multiple times, right? And then she gets to her grandmother's house. She delivers the bread, but oh no, it's not her grandmother. It's the wolf, and the wolf gobbles her up. Did everyone have something along those lines? Right, like along those lines. Like I might have skipped a few details, but I got the broad strokes. Why is this story so easy for us to recall, especially when most of us have not read or engaged with this story recently? Because it has a beginning, middle, and an end. That's one reason, right? We're taught that stories should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's the way the human brain works. We want to categorize, we want to organize, we want to make sure things make sense. A beginning, a middle, and an end helps us make sense of things. It's also what makes life and our experiences a little tricky, right? Because our experiences don't have a clear beginning, middle, and end. Life is nuanced. Our experiences are complex. They're complicated. Another reason this story is so easy to recall is because it's repeated, replicated, and referenced in history, in pop culture, in this episode of The Family Guy, right? So even if it's something that you've never even read, maybe you've never read the story, but if chances are if you've lived in the US for a good portion of your life, you've encountered this narrative, right? You know Little Red is on the pathway, she gets approached by the wolf, at the end he eats her, right? Like you know that. It doesn't even matter if you've read it or not. Our experiences zigzag. Poverty, in particular, is not linear. We know this. The data tells us this, right? Poverty is a zigzagging experience. The notion of rag to riches, of point A to point B, and thinking that our work is what gets to point A to point B is false, right? Let's pause. When you know a story so well that you can repeat it back to somebody, having never even heard the story or having not read it for a long time, you know how it ends before somebody telling you the story even gets there. You knew the wolf ate Little Red before I told you that the wolf ate Little Red. When you know our story so well, how do you think that translates into social narratives, right? I know that this is a kid's story. I know we're talking about Little Red Riding Hood as a children's story. But do you see how this phenomenon might apply to social narratives and why it could be really, really dangerous? What happens when we assign a beginning, a middle, and an end to somebody else's story? What happens when we then repeat that story to somebody else? We tell our friends a story because it explains something that's hard for our brains to understand, right? It makes us feel better. It makes us feel like something is resolved when we have a clear beginning, middle, and end. Are you starting to see the danger here? Are you starting to pick up what I'm laying down? This is how harmful social narratives are born. The three biggest drivers of social narratives: the news and entertainment industry, of which I am a member, academia and research, and policy. These are mutually reinforcing drivers of social narratives. These three reinforce harmful narratives on economic mobility, sometimes quietly, and sometimes really, really loudly. Because of how these three social narrative drivers continue to reinforce the harmful and dangerous narratives that we've been told, we think we know the whole story. And we often approach solutions as if we know the whole story. What's more, we think that there is just one story, or maybe two, but no more than two. There's no more than two stories when it comes to poverty and economic mobility. Let's look a little bit closer at some of these harmful narratives. Bad decisions. We've heard this one, that poverty is a result of bad decisions, that people who are experiencing poverty are deserving of consequences, that somehow poverty is just a natural byproduct of humanity. Alcohol, drug use, crime, these are all narratives that get intertwined with economic mobility narratives. These are reinforced by practices and policies that effectively criminalize poverty, right? There's a new Head House Square in Philadelphia. It just had this new, some people call it gorgeous, I wouldn't, but this new makeover, and all of the seating areas in Head House Square, none of them have backs. They're not built to be comfortable. They're not built for people to spend a lot of time there. They're not built for people to stretch out or lay down on, right? These are quiet decisions, quiet policies, quiet practices that reinforce these narratives of what it means to be experiencing poverty. They're the lazy news narratives that my industry continues to be guilty of. The lazy photos, the lazy headlines that dumb down, that don't challenge people in thinking in more complex ways about poverty and economic mobility. And then there's the bad decisions that we're afraid of when we talk about cash assistance and public assistance and other public benefits, the bad decisions that we're afraid that people will make. Charity is another harmful narrative when it comes to poverty. And I know that's a big one in this space, so allow me to reframe this a little bit for you. We think a lot about philanthropy as providing the answer, but this gives the government and the private sector a pass. It reinforces the idea that poverty is accidental. And in the US, it completely negates the fact that economic immobility of Black and brown communities is a direct result of intentional exclusion. When we talk about charity, we often are reinforcing notions of falling on hard times or somebody being down on their luck, right? These phrases further perpetuate these narratives that poverty is accidental. My favorite harmful poverty narrative is that of the self-made man and pulling oneself up by their bootstraps. My friends, this is literally impossible. Here's a little history for you. The etymologist Barry Popek and a lexicographer Ben Zimmer, they cite a newspaper snippet from 1834 as the earliest published reference of pulling oneself up by their bootstraps. There was a dude whose name was literally Nimrod, who wrote into the newspaper saying that he could do something impossible. And the newspaper responded with a snarky reply that he'd probably succeeded at pulling himself up over a barnyard fence by his bootstraps. It's not real. But if it were, who could do that? What would you need in order to pull yourself up by your bootstraps? Well, you'd need some boots. That would be first. And you would need them to have straps that weren't broken. You would need the physical ability to pull yourself up. You would need a safe place to stand because you're probably going to fall. And so you'd probably need somebody there to help you up. Maybe more people, maybe a team. You would definitely need instructions in your language. That's a lot. Just to attempt something that's impossible. What sorts of folks do you think have access to these necessary components of pulling oneself up by one's bootstraps? Like who? Diving in just a little bit deeper into the impact of these harmful narratives, we come to the benefits cliff. Here's some other facts. I know we've stated some facts this morning. Here's some other facts. More facts, friends. Poverty is defined by a statute, right? It is actually not a gray term at all. We know exactly what poverty means. And in the United States, poverty is defined, if you are a household, let's go one parent and one child. All right, so the poverty wage is less than $6.19 an hour. In Pennsylvania, the minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. That's just $1.06 more than poverty wage. The MIT cost of living wage calculator for Delaware County, that's the county that Villanova is in, puts a family-sustaining wage at $29.63. So that's more than $20 between where public assistance for this family would start to taper, which would be at about $8.60, and what this family needs in order to be able to sustain itself in this county. there are steep barriers to benefits. Even if that's something that you can apply for, there are very steep barriers. For undocumented immigrants, for returning citizens, for folks who are unhoused. And these barriers make cash assistance almost impossible for large swaths of our neighbors who need it most. And what about the negative social consequences? We don't talk a lot about that. We don't talk a lot about the stigma that's associated with being a recipient of government benefits and how that gets balanced with the cash assistance that you're actually receiving. This is the definition of economic mobility that Resolve Philly uses as we support the nation's largest collaborative reporting project. Ours is focused on economic mobility. It's called Broke in Philly. Mobility is the word we like to use. Mobility means choice, right? Mobility is agency, and mobility means more than financial success. Mobility means being valued in your community. Mobility means power and autonomy, and this definition demands that we balance something like cash assistance against value in the community and power and autonomy. There are 3 parts to this definition, and none is more important than the other. If you don't have all 3 here, agency is just not possible. Carry this definition with you throughout the day and throughout the work. And as you're evaluating solutions to the poverty in this community and globally, I'd ask you to also consider this 5-part strategy also from the US Partnership on Mobility from Poverty. Changing the narrative and transforming how we use and engage with data are both critical to effective solutions. Effective solutions will ensure that we're creating good access to good jobs. It'll make sure that people who are born in a certain place are not destined to the financial outcomes associated with being born in a certain place. And solutions will provide support that empowers, that builds agency, that builds value. I'd ask Villanova, how are y'all as an employer, as a research and academic institution, and as a community anchor, moving forward with this strategy in your anti-poverty work? I'm biased as a journalist and a storyteller. I think that changing the narrative is probably the most important one up here. Changing the narrative creates the environment that makes the rest of the work possible. So my challenge to all of you is to stop operating on autopilot when it comes to narratives about poverty and economic mobility. Complicate those narratives. Our stories are complicated. Look for the nuance. Trust an experience lived. If Little Red tells you that she kicked the wolf in the gut, even if it doesn't align with the story that you've been told since you were a child, trust her experience. And challenge the stories that you've been told time and time again about poverty, about mobility, about what it means to be poor. Poke holes in the traditional narratives and the traditional representation of poverty in mainstream media. Challenge me, challenge journalists, challenge the news, challenge your institutions. Villanova, as you're working towards these solutions, I would also urge you to think about the language that you're using. Does it center poverty as an experience, or does it center poverty as a trait, an immutable part of our identity that we can't change? Challenge the tired and false narratives. Challenge the words. It's not easy work. It often requires holding a mirror up. It requires intention and commitment, hard conversations, and it's personal for a lot of people. Have these conversations like the people you're talking about are in the room with you, because they are. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you to the organizers for sharing this space. My name is Roxana Bendezú. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a descendant of the Quechua people of the Andes, and first, I'd like to recognize, honor, and respect the people of the Lenni Lenape Nation as the traditional stewards of the lands and water on which Villanova is now present. I am part of the teams at Pax Christi USA, a Catholic movement for peace with justice, and a small, but I may say, mighty organization called Migrant Roots Media, MRM, an independent, multilingual, multimedia organization that amplifies the voices of migrants, children of migrants, and those fighting to stay in their countries of origin. Our work seeks to unearth the root causes of migration by examining global systems of displacement, including the role of US foreign policy around the world, and in particular, in the global South. We strategically position intersectional voices so they can advance more just narratives and socio-political analysis concerning migration and other social issues. And since we're at a Catholic institution, I'll mention that this is how I practice my ministry. I'm not allowed to wear a collar yet. However, I follow his, capital H, footsteps. The one who was born in what would be considered a working class family, who became a refugee, and who was ultimately killed by an empire that was occupying the territory where he was born. For the last 10 days, I've been traveling with a caravan of mothers of disappeared migrants, with Ángela, Doña Araceli, Doña Irma, Doña Bertila, and Keren. And other people who are accompanying, like Rubén Figueroa, like Alejandra Mejía, like Bárbara Sostaita, like Don Vicente from Águilas del Desierto. They are here not only to continue the search for their loved ones, but to demand changes that allow us to build a world where no human being is forcibly displaced from their community. We must recognize that the US government must stop training military and police personnel from around the world who very often violate the human rights of the people in their own countries. As Stephanie mentioned, poverty is man-made. I exhort you to not approach life as a savior. I'm here to ask and to demand that instead you do all you can to seek justice. The accumulation of wealth is, in fact, the reason why there is poverty in our world. Check your investment portfolios and make sure you stop profiting from death. Let's make sure that when we talk about poverty, we do it in a way that is not US-centric. Because the policies that come from here affect the entire world. We have an immense responsibility. Let's do it with love, Caritas, and always, always seeking justice. And now let me introduce you to Ángela Lacayo. She has been traveling all this time with the Caravana de Madres de Personas Migrantes Desaparecidas, and she's going to tell you about her story and her analysis, because we also have analysis. Thank you.
Buenos días. Mi nombre es Ángela Lacayo. Soy de Honduras. Okay.
Hi, I'm going to be interpreting today. Good morning. My name is Ángela Lacayo. I am from Honduras.
Yo tengo a un hijo desaparecido que él migró a este país por diferentes razones. A veces pensamos que nuestros jóvenes de nuestro país migran por un sueño, pero no es un sueño. Las causas principales son otras. Nuestros gobiernos. Sí.
I am the mother of a disappeared son who migrated to the United States for multiple reasons, but I want to make it clear that it's not for a dream, it's for necessity and a lot of other reasons that I will explain.
Yo estoy aquí en representación de muchas madres, como lo dijo la compañera Roxana, representando a miles de madres que quedan en nuestros países en busca de un familiar o un hijo desaparecido.
I am here representing not just myself, but also a committee in my own country of origin, and I come representing thousands of families who couldn't be here today, but who are also the mothers of migrants who have been disappeared along the migratory route.
Hablábamos de las causas principales porque migran nuestros jóvenes, la pobreza, la delincuencia, el crimen organizado, las maras y principalmente el gobierno.
We're here to talk about some of the root causes of this migration, including organized crime, poverty, violence in different forms, such as gang violence, but also to make clear the role that the government has in creating these root causes.
Nuestros gobiernos centroamericanos reciben dinero de este país y ese dinero no es invertido en lo que realmente debería de ser, que no haya pobreza, dar mayor oportunidad de empleo, y ellos lo que invierten ese dinero es en entrenar a los militares, a los policías.
The United States government sends a lot of money to Central America, and this money does not usually go to the causes that it is advertised to be going to, such as, providing jobs, like providing employment, helping people. The money doesn't go to that. The money actually goes to militarize the police and to continue to arm the militaries in places like Central America.
Por primera vez andamos alzando nuestras voces en este país, haciendo incidencia. Queremos que escuchen el clamor de una madre.
For the first time, we are in this country elevating our own voices, coming here to talk to you so that you will listen directly to the mothers and to who we are. The mothers are directly affected people.
Me da gusto estar aquí en una universidad donde estudian las leyes, pero las leyes ustedes las estudian, pero otros las crean. Y lo importante es que esas leyes nuevas que salgan y que afecte al mundo puedan alzar ustedes las voces para que esas no sean aprobadas.
It is a pleasure to be at a university, at a place that studies laws. And obviously laws are created elsewhere, but as people who are studying law here, I beg you to center the voices of those who are directly affected, to fight against laws that are not just, and to create laws that are centered towards justice and helping people in their justice.
Muchas veces esas leyes dañan al mundo entero. Esas leyes no solo son hechas para este país, sino que para dañar al mundo entero. Nosotros queremos que hayan como petición, nosotros andamos todas las madres alzando nuestras voces y queremos hacer muchas peticiones.
A lot of times the laws created here in the United States do not only affect the United States, but they affect the rest of the world. And we as mothers come here to you with some petitions.
Podría hacer una lista enorme de peticiones, pero me he enfocado en tres principales peticiones. Que hayan búsquedas de campo para nuestros familiares desaparecidos.
The list of petitions could be long and never-ending, but I come here with three of them today. The first is that there be searches conducted along the migratory route looking for disappeared people and bodies.
Visas humanitarias para aquellas madres que quisieran venir a hacer búsquedas de sus hijos que fueron extraviados o perdidos en las rutas migratorias.
The second petition is that there be humanitarian visas for mothers or other family members who want to search for their disappeared ones here in the United States.
Y la otra, que cese la militarización en nuestras fronteras. La militarización no solo está en la frontera de México con Estados Unidos, sino en cada uno de nuestros países.
And finally, to cease the militarized border or the militarization of the border, because the border is not, the US-Mexico border is not the only border that's militarized, but also other borders in Central America.
Los dineros que son recibidos de este gobierno pues son utilizados para tener mayor militarización, no para lo que debería de ser, para eliminar la pobreza. No es un delito ser pobre, ¿verdad? Pero a veces la pobreza nos hace huir de nuestros países.
The money that is funneled from this country into Central America oftentimes ends up going to the hypermilitarization of the society and the police. Being poor is not a crime, but because we face conditions that create poverty, a lot of us are forced to leave our countries of origin.
No es fácil andar dando a conocer al mundo de nuestro dolor. Pedirles que abran su corazón a la humanidad para que podamos romper fronteras, ¿verdad? Que podamos tener una vida digna.
It is not easy to go around telling your story as the mothers have done, but we come to you begging you to open your hearts to humanity, and also we come here in order to break borders.
Yo ando con mi corazón abierto buscando a mi hijo. Yo solo tuve 2 hijos, pero tengo un hijo extraviado y otro tuvo que emigrar por las malas inversiones de nuestros gobernantes. Es duro para mí, ando con un corazón, con una herida que no sana. No es fácil, pero andamos aquí haciendo la lucha con todas estas madres, porque unidas jamás seremos vencidas. Y los buscamos porque los amamos.
I come here to you with an open heart. I only had 2 children, 2 sons. One of them has disappeared. The other one migrated to the United States, due to necessity, due to need. And I come here to you with an open heart, sharing my story. And the most important thing to remember is that the mothers, we are united in struggle, and we will not be defeated.
Muchas gracias. Que Dios les bendiga.
Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. And there are more voices that need to be heard. And today there is an event at 2 p.m. where you could be able to hear from the rest of the mothers who are also part of the Caravan, and from organizers who have a long trajectory supporting their struggle. So I invite you to join us today from 2 to 3:30. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. A great opportunity to share and learn today what we've already learned. In this symposium, anti-poverty, to focus our attention on the causes and the solutions. And so the idea today, I come as somebody, I was born in the Bronx, and anybody needs to know anybody else from the Bronx, and spent most of my life in Peru, in South America. When I was a student here, I volunteered to go to the mission, the Augustinian mission in Peru, and I worked there for most of my life. I returned 6 years ago. And since then, I've been doing what I can here at Villanova. I teach, and I'm part of the mission. I promote the mission of the university. And do we live our mission? we're challenged. It's in front of us. And so today I get the opportunity to challenge myself. When I talk about poverty, what do you think of when I say poverty? We have some great personal experience we've just heard. But poverty, I like to define, I like to clarify that poverty, 3 different types of poverty. Make it clear. There's material poverty, real material poverty. And hopefully, we don't have a personal experience of that, but most of the people in the world do. To be poor is to be weak. It's to be indigent. It's to be hungry. It's to be listless because I don't have enough to eat, and so I can't pay attention. I can't follow the argument. I'm not treated like a human being. I'm treated as less. I don't have a full voice. In fact, my voice cannot be raised because I am worth less in the eyes of society. When you're poor, you're subhuman. That's my experience. My experience in the mountains of the Andes of Peru, my experience in the second driest desert in Peru. No, I wasn't born into that, but I'm trying to communicate the experience that many people have of poverty. This is what we're talking about. Villanova University, it's a different story. The poor are victims. They're vulnerable. The poor are dependent. The poor are the result of shattering God's plan. And that's where I come from, my understanding of God's plan, that people are not poor because God wants them to be poor. People are not poor, materially poor, because they're lazy. It's because they're left out. They have not been given the opportunity. They've been treated as worth less. And they've assumed it. We put them in that position, which we've heard. People who have been placed in that position. Material poverty is degrading and contrary to the will of God. We cannot believe in a God who would want this to be. I do not believe in that God. I believe that God created everything for everybody. It's all gifts. And so material poverty is to be denied my participation in that gift. That I have been given that by God, everyone. And yet, the cause, I believe, of the poverty is not the will of God, it's rather me. Selfishness. God is generous. God is bountiful. God is overflowing. And I am stingy. I don't share. I certainly don't share enough. Do you think God did not create enough for everybody? If he did, well then the reason why everybody does not have and all things are not flourishing, all life, which is why Jesus came, that a man of Nazareth, which we just heard spoken of, he came so that everybody and everything might have abundant life abundant. We could flourish, and we are not. So material poverty is not God's will. What are we doing about it? The second type of poverty, to be really clear, is material poverty good? Anybody think it's good? We're on a different page if you do. Material poverty is not the will of God, not your will, I hope. Material poverty is bad. It's not going to allow us to flourish. Well, what? Spiritual poverty. Spiritual poverty is, just to be clear, because many times we think spiritual poverty is, oh, I don't know who God is, I don't have any faith. No. A spiritual poverty is absolute, utter dependence on God. Realizing that everything comes from God. It doesn't allow me to believe in pulling myself up by my own bootstraps. That can't happen. Everybody has been gifted with everything, but some of us have taken too much, and we don't share. Spiritual poverty is recognizing that that everything comes from God. So can I be rich and practice spiritual poverty? Sure, but it's a lot harder. Wanting to be rich does not allow me to practice spiritual poverty. Because I want to have more. I want to be more than others. I want to dominate others. And so that's the cause of material poverty. Spiritual poverty, exactly the opposite. Realizing that everything comes freely given from God for everybody. And so that's why we give thanks when we eat. We give thanks when we come together. We give thanks for the gifts that we have been given, and we feel bad that we don't share enough. So material poverty, not so good. Spiritual poverty, hopefully it's attractive to you. Because if it is, well, then the third type of poverty is the solution. Voluntary poverty. I choose. I, a human being, I decide that what I have been gifted by God, I choose to share with others. Voluntary poverty is not wanting to have more. It's wanting to share more, wanting to be more. So voluntary poverty as the way out, as looking ahead, being poor in spirit, but also acting. It's not enough to have the attitude. It's to have the activities to carry out, which we're about to hear from our next panelist, specific activity that is done to share what God has given to everybody. But caution. Voluntary poverty, sometimes called solidarity, has to be really well understood. Is charity good in your mind? Charity good? Is feeding the hungry a good idea? Not if you don't ask why they are hungry. Not if you are not working at changing the circumstances that cause that person to be hungry, be without a job, to not have the essential health care. So charity is toxic if it only addresses the immediate need. But charity is needed. Give food to the hungry. Drink to the thirsty. Yes, these are evangelical principles. They're good, but they're not good enough. They will not transform society into what God dreams, God's passion for society, where everything and everybody flourishes. Does that make sense? So toxic charity. Charity is good, is needed, but far from enough. What is needed, bottom line, for me, and that's why you invited me, right? Is dignity. Is dignity. Is realizing, yes, I am worth. God loves me so much. Everything I have is gift. Dignity is being, trying to be, striving to be the image of God in this world for one another. Trying to be like God, who wants everybody to have everything. Nobody to go to bed hungry. Nobody to have to sleep outdoors, unless they want to. But the challenge is to recognize my own dignity and the dignity of others as well. Dignity tells me that no one is so poor that they have nothing to offer. Society treats the poor as though they had nothing to offer. Dignity stands that in the face and says, it isn't true. Toxic charity allows me to patronize. It allows me to paternalize. It allows me to make somebody feel less. They depend on me, on my it's a feel good, and it's not enough. It needs to be based on the fact that everybody has something to offer. So that when I share a plate of food with you, I am looking at you And I'm recognizing you as a person with a name, and you are enriching me with your experience. You are enriching me with your questions. And I may be able to share food with you, but you are sharing with me. You are nourishing me. Does that make sense? So it's not merely giving. That's toxic. It's treating people with dignity, realizing my dignity, realizing the dignity of each and every human being. Anybody have more dignity? Anybody have less? We treat people differently, don't they? Father Peter's not here. We treat people differently because of their position, which is disrespect for the dignity of each and every human being. There's no one who's worthless, if we believe that. So basic, solid principle, solution for me, bottom line is respect for the dignity of each and every human being. Not for what they have, but for who they are. Not for how much they have in the bank, not for the degree they have hanging on their wall, but because they are image and likeness of God. Just as much as I am. Just as much as you are. No one worth less, no one who has nothing to offer. We're better together. We need one another. And if we reject and we sectorize and we redline and we discount, we all suffer. Everything is interconnected. Everything is interdependent. So dignity is the source, the foundational principle, Catholic social thought, which is simply another way of saying universal principle for transforming this world into what God created it to be, nourishing everybody. But a principle which comes from that, stems from that, is the common good. So that I believe in the dignity of each and every human being. Well, it's not just me. It's not just number one. It's not America first, which might be solid economic policy, but not so hot interpersonal relationship. And certainly not going to achieve God's dream for the world. Common good means, any of you parents, grandparents, you practice it to the nth degree. Common good is, I sacrifice for the good of others. And that's what we're about. Parents and grandparents do, we want to do it as a society. The reason for a government to exist is for the common good. Is that right? We judge, we measure, we take the temperature of a society, of a government, by how they treat the least. How do we treat? How do we treat? And I'm not just talking about the least in the United States or the least in Philadelphia. Yes, give them food. Yes, feed them. Yes, give them a home. But yes, treat them with dignity. And yes, what we just heard, realize that what we do here affects a lot more many other countries and many other people. The consequences of it. So common good is reaching out to all. Sharing everything with everybody. Sound good? Want to do that? Well, why don't we? Subsidiarity is the third principle. Dignity, the source. Common good, it flows. Subsidiarity, real tough one, because even to pronounce it. Subsidiarity means support without supplanting. Help. Stand by. Walk with. Look in the face. Ask how you're doing. But don't supplant. Don't decide for me. Yes, help me. I need help. Obviously. We can't do it alone. But don't supplant me. I have something to offer. Don't tell me that I have nothing to offer by your attitude. Don't serve me a plate of food and treat me as though I were a mouth. I'm a human being. We need to be treated as such. Subsidiarity recognizes the worth of each person and the contribution which we all have to give. Make sense? So dignity, common good, subsidiarity, and the fourth and last principle of Catholic social thought is solidarity. And we think that's feel good. Yeah, disaster. Oh yeah, let's reach out. No. It's a firm, determined, persistent desire to act on behalf of everybody. I do what I can. I don't have to be in Peru to know that my actions affect the people in Peru. Well, am I aware of that? We just heard of the witness, effects of what we do. So those 4 principles, which help us understand the value of their source, dignity, the worth of each and every human being, the respect which they merit, dignity in a society which values people for what they have rather than who they are. Feeding the hungry, indispensable. Feeding dependency, not so much. Feeding a system which structures itself to leave entire sectors out, no. Feeding that feel-good attitude, which doesn't address the causes of the need. So, will a living wage, and here's what Steph, will a living wage resolve the issue of poverty? Definitely not. $7.25 an hour, no. $15 an hour, no. It doesn't even talk to the issue. Yes, that's charity. Living wage, the best it is charity. Because nobody deserves it. And nobody deserves $50 an hour. And nobody deserves $100. It's all gift. It's creating a society, a structure, an economy, which is built on that concept. That we don't get what we deserve, we get what we need. Dignity is the issue. We don't all need the same thing. Look at me. I don't need a suit. Mark, you got a suit. This is enough for me. Different. And thank God we're different. Imagine if everybody were like me. Oh, go on. We'd go on forever. No, we need people to be different. Dignity is that respect for the difference. It's appreciating the difference. It's recognizing and it's sharing what I have and being willing to receive from others what they're willing to share with me. Because other times our pride does not allow us to do that. So dignity is the issue. Not money, not our salary, not a program, not a law. Don't think of legislating morality. It starts at home. The values that I learn in my house will allow me or not to reach out to somebody in need, to change the situation which causes that need, which changes society, elects officials who work to provide universal health care. Dignity is the basis, the recognition of the value of each and every human being. Change all the laws you want. Change all the governments you want. And I've lived in several different ones in Peru. Lived in right-wing military dictatorships, left-wing military dictatorships, democracy of the right and democracy of the left. It starts at home, in my neighborhood, how I treat others, and it builds. It doesn't stop with sharing a plate of food. It has to go beyond that to transform the structure of society. So it snowballs. But it doesn't start from the top. It starts in my heart and your heart, and it never stops. Yes, we do need from on top, but it starts personally. Any transformation, and to get rid of poverty is going to start with you and with me. Do you believe that? What I do today, or what I don't do today, because I'm busy about something else. It starts with me personally, and then communally. What I do with my neighbors, not just those of my own political party, not just those of my own particular confession or sect. My neighbors, the people who live closest to me, and my desire to reach out to others, to be transformative in my activity, to be transformative in my actions, to be transformative in my thinking. We cannot restore dignity. Be nice. We don't have to, because dignity is not given to me by the Constitution of the United States or by the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Dignity is mine because I'm a human being, and it's yours. It's recognizing something. We can't eliminate it. You can't discard it. We can treat people as though they don't have it, but ask Nelson Mandela. Did he need to have his dignity restored? He knew he was worth. Do we know our worth? Our worth comes from being like God, sharing all that we have, all that we are. We, the people. We, the church. We are called to give witness each day of our lives that everybody has dignity. No one is worth less. That's my idea of the solution.
So thank you all for being here today. And I got my little notes together. I am not a public speaker. I will tell you that. I don't know why Miss Stephanie keeps calling on me, but I'm gonna go with it and I'm gonna share what I have to share. So being with that, I'm gonna get to it. So I'll start off by saying thank you all so much for coming out today. There's many other places that you could have been, but the fact that you are here, present in this room and virtually it's promising. I hope that today, something that someone says to you makes you uncomfortable. I really honestly was trying to prepare what I was gonna say. I haven't had to address a group of people like this only in church. And you were giving your testimony, and right there, you were telling how God worked in your life, and everybody was, amen. This is different. This is a whole different bowl of wax. Not everybody is going through the same thing. So I hope that something that someone says to you makes you feel uncomfortable enough to do something about it. I reached out to a friend because of this engagement, and I told them what I was doing, and they responded to me that this was like, wow, the magnitude of being up here and is important. So they gave me a little script of like, this is what you can talk about. Because I'm kind of a off the cuff, feel the spirit type of person, and whatever comes out, comes out. So I did structure some, but I'm not gonna lie, I didn't finish it all, so we're just gonna go with it, okay? The first question, or the first topic was, who are you? Who am I? Well, by golly, that had to be the hardest question out of the entire thing that they gave me, or that he gave me to even talk about. Who am I? I could tell you my name, you've all heard my name, but I'm so much more than my name. And I wanted for everybody to be comfortable in a way where you could relate to me and I could relate to you, because that's where change happens. You understand where I'm coming from, and I can understand maybe where you're coming from. So I'm gonna list a couple of things of who I am, and maybe you will understand, and maybe you'll say I'm those things too. On the list of the speakers here today, I'm a board member of SRI Hub. I'm also a nationally certified pharmacy technician, which I worked really hard for, okay? I'm a registered voter. I'm a registered organ donor. I'm a bilingual Latina woman. I'm a daughter, a granddaughter, a wife, which that's just COO of the Robinson family. That in itself that wears many hats, so, all right? I'm a fur mama to 3 fabulous fur children. I'll show you pictures, but we're not here for that. I'm a niece, a cousin, a friend, a godmother, a spiritual sister, a comedian, a singer, and artist. But if we're keeping it simple, I'm Alicia. It's truly an unreal feeling being here. Like, this is Villanova University, right? This is what it's called, yes, okay. I can't even imagine coming here. Like, to be a student here, bringing your family here to see you graduate from a big fancy school like this with a degree, oh my God, that's gotta be the proudest moment for you, your families, or for your students if you're faculty. And for me, well, the biggest celebration of my academic success was high school. That's what you got. Because my parents didn't graduate high school. So to see me graduate high school, that was like, woohoo! We did it. We got it through high school. If you were blessed to have money, then you went on to college. Or if you were super nerd, You got scholarships, or if you were an amazing athlete, you got scholarships to go to school. I fell somewhere in the middle of all that. My household was 2 working parents. I did have both my mom and my dad, so I was blessed to have that. Not many of my friends did, but they were working all the time. I was by myself a lot. And then there were times where one parent wasn't working and the struggle was real. The lights were getting cut off. The heat got cut off. Sometimes there wasn't food in the refrigerator. That's where the hardships began. So those of us that didn't have the opportunity to go to college, well, what did we do? Well, we enlisted in the military. That was your way to get a college education. Or you entered into being a full-time student of a school known as the Hard Knocks. All right? Have you ever heard of it? The Hard Knocks? Ever heard that type of phrase? Well, it's tough. It's not meant for the weak. The study program is intense. It can be very discouraging, and sometimes you may feel like you'll never get past that life lesson thrown on your lap. And when you do, you get hit with another challenge. You learn to live with some of the challenges that you're faced with because there is just no way out, so you take that weight along with you. And well, there's no big celebration and no carloads of families coming when you graduate this. There is no stage because this is life. And I may not have the same highly decorated initials behind my name like some of these people are, or striving to get a degree that some of you are. But right now, I'm earning my associates in the School of Hard Knocks. And it's an uphill climb working on my master's. My current life lesson is overcoming survival mode. So now here's where it goes off of it took me a week to get that together, okay? My story. Well, I got married. Everything was great. Then things got hard. No job. Not enough income. You start couch surfing and going to other people's house, which is a form of homelessness. And it's not something that I jumped into, but it just happened. Like, this is what it was. I ended up moving to Philadelphia. I'm from Atlantic City, New Jersey area. And I ended up moving to Philadelphia to find something more. Get out of what we were going through and get a house. We were given the opportunity to get a house. Where were we? We were both working at the time. And because of situations, we ended up homeless and living in a hotel room. And I was busting my butt, and so was my husband, just to afford the hotel room. But at the same time, still trying to save money because, you know, when you get a house, you have to have first month's rent, second month's rent, security deposit, utility signs up. It's a process. So we made the move. We jumped. We don't have any kids. We didn't have to worry about school. Let's do it. It seemed fine in the beginning, but those same issues followed us here. They didn't change. The only thing that did change is that the familiarity that we had when we were in our own neck of the woods, in our own stomping ground, we didn't have that here. So it was hard. We did the best that we could, and it came to a point that we lost our home. We had a certain amount of time to pack up all our things and get out. I left many things behind, many sentimental things, because I just didn't have enough room. I had to move my things by my hand with no truck and no help. So we forfeited everything and just took what we had on our back and we left. I had my disabled father with me when I made the move to Philadelphia because I am an only child. So I wanted to be sure that my dad was fine because my mother had recently passed away. So I wanted to be sure he was being taken care of. all of things that contributed to survival mode, all of the things, the traumatic experience that just make you keep going. And we made our way here. When we lost our home, that's when things, they spiraled. How did they spiral? Well, we tried to stay with family, but that's not working. They live by different ways than we do. They are requesting things of us that we could not. And we had to move all the way to New Jersey and still have our jobs in Philadelphia in order to try to continue to make it. We were spending all of our money in travel. We didn't have a car. We had to take buses and trains and extra trains. So it was impossible for us to see the cycle being broken and for us to continue forward. But we did. We made the leap. And by doing that, I had to forfeit having my pet. I have a dog, my emotional support animal, my best pal in the entire world, and I had to give my dog away. I tried for the life of me not to give this dog away. I said, no, we're not doing it, and we slept on the train. We slept on the benches that have recently been changed by the ones that don't have a seat but just have the back to lean on. Well, we slept on those benches for a while, and now we can't if we were ever to get back there. But so that means that other people can't. And the ball started rolling. I don't know what happened. We happened to be in the right place at the right time, but with all my heart, I gave my dog up. And I wrote a novel. There is a paper that you have, and I don't have it with me, but you have to give reason as to why you do what you're doing with your pet. And I wrote on there that I loved my baby, and I didn't want to give my baby up, but please find it a home, and all these things, like this is mine. This is the last thing that I have that is mine, and now I have to give that up too. So we had just enough money to get a hotel room for that weekend, and we gave up the dog, and I went back to the hotel room crying, and we got a phone call. There was someone at the shelter, the animal shelter, that knew of Stephanie, and Stephanie was helping people who were experiencing homelessness. And she was trying to help, talk to her. She's going to be able to help you. Okay, fine. We'll do it. We called her up and she said, yes, hi, how are you? Come over to my house tomorrow. Yes, we're going to talk. Yes, definitely. Okay, I'm nervous. This is the most, you don't know somebody's going to help you. So if somebody's going to help you, what happens? They probably have money, because if they're going to help you, then they're probably somebody who's well off enough to give you that assistance, right? I was nervous. I thought I was going to come to a house that had the room with white that you could not touch it. I thought I thought she was going to be in just go sit over there. I'm in a conference call right now. Don't worry. I'll be right with you. Would you like water? And I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm dressed like whatever we had on. I can't even tell you. And I'm thinking to myself, oh God, now we got to go tell this story. And now we got to explain ourselves. And when it came to the door, and I'm going to put her out there, okay, for all her students, she came to the door in a cow onesie. Give it up for her. Yes. She came to the door with a cow onesie. Now, at that moment, me and my husband are just thinking this is a make or break moment. This lady can help us or not help us. And when she opened the door, we both looked at each other come on in. And it was amazing. You know why it was amazing? Because I recognized that this woman was in her own survival mode. She was living in a small apartment that was full of her life, her children, her world. And she was going to sit here and help me? She got a lot of things going on in her life. Well, she did. But first, we had to eat. She broke bread with us. That right there was oh, okay. We're going to talk and we're going to be normal human beings. This is not an office doctor setting where you're going to come with your white coat and I'm going to be nervous. You really want to know who I am. Okay. this is where the public speaking part starts, because from there on, she just kept saying, come, I want you to talk. I want you to talk about it. But it was just me being honest and what I was going through. And me speaking on the fact that my husband was working a job. I was working 3 jobs. My father was getting his Social Security benefits, and we weren't able to find a house for $950 a month. We got promised. We prayed with realtors that said, you're gonna get this place. And then we didn't hear anything from them. And when we called, oh, I'm sorry, because of your credit. So my work history meant nothing, even though I was employed for the last 9 years with a job. And before that, it was another 7 years with another company. I'm monogamous with my jobs. I don't cheat on them. I'm loyal. So it was tough. And you were facing the fact that we had animals. So those were things that we went through and we faced when we were getting to that point. I had to send my dad to California. I had to send him across the country because I couldn't have him here and there was no one to take care of him and his needs. I had to give up my animal. I had to sleep on the train. I had to sleep on the train stations. There were people that were, here, you can have this bench and don't worry about paying. If you ever travel, y'all know that there's that little thing that the thing opens and people can go through. They were letting us come through like, don't worry about it. There's nobody at the window. Come on in. It was a whole community of people. And here I am working. I got iPhone. I got iWatch, but I'm struggling. I have clothes. I'm doing well. But I'm not because I'm struggling. I don't have a home. These were the things that I was faced with, that I still had to be productive at work. I still had to put on a good face. I still had to, make my quotas at my job and still put on a happy face knowing that when this was all over, I didn't know where I was going to go. I packed my suitcase with me, hid it under my desk, and met Stephanie that day. She came in and she immediately got to work. Like, seriously. Get on the computer, start calling people, hey, how you doing? I got a family in need, this. And it was a chain effect. It was amazing. I thought I was in another world. Like, this is how it really happens? You mean it's capable for people to do this without having to say, well, come back on Monday and bring all your paperwork with you. Okay, make sure you get that lease and you get a letter of recognition or a letter of reference. And yes, we need all your 35 pay stubs. No, she didn't ask for that. She just said, come on in, tell me what we can do. And that was it. And immediately, within 24 hours, we were already on our road to try to get to a better place. Why do I share that with you? Because if that woman who was going through her own issues can do it, and have a team of people who are doing it too, then there's other people in this room that can do it. There's other people that can recognize the fact that there's a necessity in the community. You have talents. Maybe your talent is not money. Maybe your talent is a resource to them. Maybe your talent is money. Well, make sure your money is being directed to the people that actually need it. Ask questions. Educate yourself. Dive in, honey. The best way is to get your hands dirty. You can love me and see me from outside, but you don't know unless you're in here what we're talking about. So I'm still in survival mode. I took a break today, honestly, to get my hair done, to get a new outfit, because I am a bun-up jeans, t-shirts, and sneakers, hitting the bricks, hustling out there. I'm still hustling. I don't have a solid job. I have the dream to create my own business, but since I don't have the proper education, I don't know where to begin. So we're just going to start from the ground and build up. We'll learn it on the way up. But it's survival mode with learning that the reasons I go through the reactions is because of the things that I've gone through. And if you can help somebody get through those things, then it gives them a better chance to be more productive and live a life. Because I don't dream about, working every day. I'm dreaming about sitting on an island with a coconut, okay? With a straw and an umbrella in my chair, living life. That is my dream. But right now, my reality is working hard, trying to pay the bills, and just making it to the next day. So I hope that anything that anybody says from here on out and before me resonated with you, gives you some energy. I'm really glad that this happened on a Friday. Because, number one, thank God it's Friday, right? Whew. But number two, because a topic like this isn't meant for a Monday. A topic like this is meant to sit with you through the weekend. When you're comfy and you're home in your nice house and not afraid to turn on those lights or leave them on all night, or you jump in your pool or your fancy car, know that someone like me doesn't have that. I had to bust my tail to get here. I had to share things with you that I don't know you, but I'm kind of nervous now because if you see me on the street, I make sure I'm looking all right, you know? But it is nerve-wracking because you're sharing so much of yourself that, you know, it's exposure. I feel like I'm showing you my wound, and it brought up a lot of those things when I had to talk about it. So that's why I went off the hook on the fly of the handle, because I was just like, oh God, to write all this down. So I appreciate you all. I thank you for hearing me out. I'm praying that I hit all the topics that I wanted to in my thoughts. But if anything that I took away, if you take anything away, I really just appreciate you. Help is needed. And who are you?